Hey, Ed with Solomon's Landscape. Wanted to do a video. It's hot, it's dry, it's end of June, about to be July. I see a lot of turf grass stressed out. So one of the questions I get asked often, how long should I water? I have an irrigation system. How long should I water? Well, there's no simple answer. I wish there was a straightforward answer. There's some guidelines that we can start out with. Depending on, if is it a new install, is it an existing uh, turf grass that you're now just starting to irrigate, or are you just drag hoses around to make it survive? So it's a broad scope. Generally, a good rule of thumb is to start with about 15 to 20 minutes, but there's a whole lot more that goes into it. Is the grass in full sun like where I'm standing? Is it in full shade? Is the grass part shade? What type of grass is it? So there's a lot of factors involved. Realistically, no matter the type of grass that you have, potentially you just want to notice the signs. And so, with right now, a lot of times we're seeing the grass turn a little bit yellow, brown, starting to get crispy. If you walk on it, you hear those things. I also notice that there's a blue tinge sometimes, so it's not quite a green, but it's almost like a little bit of a blue tint or tinge to it. Is one of the ways to tell visually. Another way to tell visually is the ground. Is the ground hard? Is it soft? Another thing you potentially do if you wanted to take like a hand trowel, dig up some soil, and check the consistency of it. Is it just dry powder that just kind of just breaks up in your hand? Does it roll up in a little ball? Those are the kind of things that you want to look for. So when you do have an irrigation system, we usually say, hey, let's start about 15 or 20 minutes a zone on the turf grass. If it's a existing lawn, maybe 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the type of grass as well. And so realistically, on the warm season Bermuda and Zoysia grasses, which we typically see here, you want to do about an inch per week. And there's a couple ways to measure that. You can have some measuring devices and things of that, and there are other forms to measure that for you. And obviously, if you're not sure, you can always look at the grass because the grass will tell you. On the fescue side, it's a little bit different. It does require a lot more water. It does not like the heat or the humidity. Hopefully you got a little bit of shade. And if you do have fescue, hopefully you have an irrigation system as well. Because it will, it basically starts to turn brown. And that's typically lack of water or fungus, because the way the fescue is, because of the high humidity, the high heat, and then the fact that it has to be watered regularly is a perfect environment for fungus. So we're just treating for fungus because we know it's going to be there, regardless of whether it's there or not in the fescues, because it's prime environment for that fungus to exist. Bermuda is not as bad, or Zoysia they do, but not nearly as bad as the other stuff. So again, how much to water? It will vary from site to site. It will vary from zone to zone. In the full sun, you might want to start out 15 minutes on a zone. It also depends on the heads, right? It depends on the type of heads. So just as a rule of thumb, I like to say 15 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Watch, observe, see if the grass is starting to wither out, and if it start to die off a little bit or wither or turn a little blue. That means it's probably in a full sun area, so it might need a little extra water. Or areas under shade, potentially that 15 minutes might be too much, and so you might get the ground feeling a little moist or a little squishy under the feet. Um, those kind of things. So realistically, there is no one set time. You just have to basically figure out or start with a base and then adjust it from there. And then obviously season to season will be different as well. If you do have an irrigation, well, the reverse of this as well is too much water. This time of year, we don't have to typically worry about it because it's hot and dry. However, we get closer to the fall and winter months, we potentially could get too much water. or maybe we get a really wet spring, or sometimes occasionally we get a pretty wet summer, not often. And so if you do have an irrigation system, I definitely would recommend at least getting a rain sensor, which is basically a sensor that sticks outside and collects rain, and turns the clock off if there's too much rain to help avoid that. Find the time. But realistically, if you want a good healthy lawn, even though you do have an irrigation system, you do want to observe how things are in each section of your property, and make adjustments. So, questions, thoughts, concerns, drop them below. Thanks so much. Have a great